the other night and it worked.
We're adding people. Hello there and welcome. This is exciting.
It is.
Hello and welcome. We're going to just take one more minute and we'll be getting started. Awesome. Good to see people coming in.
Hot ticket.
Yes.
You too can draw a crowd.
It's amazing how Zoom just invites people. It's like, oh, I can do this from my couch.
That
was the great thing about this.
2020. Just do everything from your couch.
School committee meetings, I was like cooking dinner. It was like great multitask during that time.
The benefits, yeah. All right, I'm going to get started. Welcome to DSU 60 Questions in 60 Minutes webinar with our two school committee candidates, Kristen O'Connell and Sean Dadsetan-Foley. The format is designed to be fast and moving and an opportunity to get to know our candidates on the spot and unscripted. Our goal tonight is to discuss approach to this discussion is in a safe and accepting environment where we celebrate just like we do with students at DSU. DSU celebrates diversity and inclusion as part of its core values, and the recent news has left Duxbury residents saddened and looking for opportunities to educate students, parents, and the larger community. We will talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will also discuss important items like leadership, communication, the school budget. Candidates will answer 60 questions to both of the, will answer 60 questions, and in the essence of time, we may move through questions a little quicker. My name is Sue Bradford. I'm the mom of two Duxbury graduates and the executive director of the Duxbury Student Union for the last 12 years. Our team has sought to be the pulse of what students really need, providing programming where the schools leave off. Stay tuned for our next iteration coming on April 5th. Moderating with me tonight is Rachel Stadelman. She's a 21-year teacher at Alden School. She was also the finalist for the Massachusetts Teacher of the Year in 2010. She's also the proud mom of one son and currently lives in Pembroke. Also joining me is Jess McDermott, my work wife. She's also the assistant director of the DSU for the last 8 years and a parent of 3 Duxbury students. Jess will monitor the chat and answer any questions as we go along. Unfortunately, our student representative was unable to attend because of a conflict tonight, but he, along with a number of his peers, have created some of the questions tonight. We are really, really grateful for an incredibly engaged community. We've received hundreds of questions, way more than we could ever cover tonight. Thank you to a very passionate community. We will attempt to ask as many questions as possible, but Full disclosure, not all the questions necessarily represent the views of the Duxbury Student Union. We ask that you listen with an open mind and maintain the perspective that these candidates are being voted into a volunteer role. We are enormously grateful to have 2 candidates willing to share their time and talents to support Duxbury education. We understand that there is a learning curve for these candidates in the school committee, and tonight only represents a snapshot of where they stand today. So, Kristen and Sean, are you ready?
Ready.
Yes.
Let's go. All right,
Okay.
over to you, Rachel.
Okay. So, Kristen, welcome and thank you so much for your commitment to the community. I second what Sue said. Sean, that goes for you as well. Give me the best advice you've ever received from a teacher.
So I'm actually going to go with my high school principal. He taught me how to give a firm handshake, and I've been complimented on a firm handshake, and I have to be honest, when I get the limp fish handshake from someone else, I get a little upset. So a firm handshake was the best advice I received.
Great, thank you. And Sean, same question.
Best advice I ever got was from my 10th grade English teacher, and it was make an adjustment, not an excuse. And I think I've taken that to a bunch of different areas of my life, but it was one of those things where I heard it and I was like, I should probably write this down. I feel like this is going to be helpful a little bit later in life. So yeah, make an adjustment, not an excuse.
Excellent, thank you. Next question will be to Sean first. What's your favorite thing about yourself and why?
Favorite thing about myself is that I will find just a joy and an interest in virtually anything, which leads me to having a lot of unfinished projects on my hobbies side. So my basement's full of different woodworking and crafts items, but just my willingness to dive into something new and try it out.
Great. And Kristen, the same question to you.
That's a tough one. I'd have to go with probably that I'm very nurturing, and that has shown through my role as a parent, as a friend. I really like to take care of my friends. I bake and I cook a lot. I like to share the foods with them. As a physical therapist, my ability to nurture my patients and bring out the best in them. So I would say nurturing.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So Kristen, I'm coming back to you for the next
I'm ready.
one.
I'm ready.
So if you could teach one subject in school, what would you want to teach? Anything.
I really loved anatomy class. And I would love to teach anatomy. And it's not because I got an A in anatomy class. I, got a solid B. And that was with the help of a really good tutor. But I think learning about the body and the muscles and why they move and teaching the kids, like when you kick a ball, this is why your leg moves this way. I think that would be fun.
That's cool. Okay. And Sean, the same question to you.
Bring me back to my 6th grade English class. Just boomerang back to my first job out of college. I love the age. I love how it's an opportunity to still be very social, but you start to identify a little bit of who you are as a learner. And I just think a lot of the materials that we read at that level were just, they stuck with me really, really well. So 6th grade English, bring it.
Well, you're both hired. The next one, and I'm going to go to Sue, Sean, Sue, you're not answering to me, Sue. Last one for this section is, Sean, tell me the best advice you could give to your 17-year-old self.
Best advice I can give to my 17-year-old self would be to not be so anxious about trying new things. And I think that was something that I learned to do a little bit later on in my early adult life. But I think there are some pretty significant life experiences that happen end of high school, beginning of college, or around that age, that I think with just a little bit more of an open mind and less anxiety preventing me from jumping into it, I think that that could have led to some really powerful moments.
Excellent. And Kristen?
I have to agree. I think just being more open-minded, and I'm going to take it as like you don't have all the answers. And unfortunately, I learned that much later in life. Like the more you learn, the more you don't know anything. Like there's still so much out there to learn.
Yeah.
So I think just being open-minded and trying the new experiences, saying yes, being open to what other people have to offer you instead of thinking your way is the way to go. So I would have just tell myself just to be open-minded, enjoy what's going on, and say yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys both.
Thank you.
Terrific. Well, let's fast forward to 2020.
All right.
Tell me, Kristen, what was a new skill? What's the new skill that you learned in 2020?
I learned how to make pasta, homemade pasta.
Love it.
Yes, and I've been making it since March. So I will say that if I make homemade mac and cheese for the kids, I do buy store-bought pasta because the macaroni takes forever to make, and making tiny little macaroni, I haven't built myself up to that, but I've made gnocchis, I've made raviolis, I've made spaghetti, macaroni, and I love it. I really love it. It's amazing. So that's what I've learned in 2020.
Awesome. How about you, Sean?
I learned how to install crown molding, which was great to kind of give that extra little pizzazz to some rooms around the house. But I think just, and probably something shared with a lot of people, just finding more things to keep you busy around a house. And so I may not be great at them, but I definitely learned how to do some of them.
Great. So tell me, 2020 was certainly a year of uncertainty. How did you manage stress over the last year? That question is to you first, Sean.
Sure. And I know that this past year has had a significant impact on everyone's own resiliencies, and we're testing it almost at every intersection. And I think I'm very thankful that my position and my professional world helps me continue to process a lot of these items, not only just so that I can be a resource for the students and the community members of Massasoit that I work with during the day, but also learning resources that I can also bring home and help redistribute back out to my family, my community. So just staying invested in that work and knowing that it helps out kind of both day and night. And then I'd say ultimately just enjoying my dogs. They have this sense of ignorant bliss that you could have the worst day in the world and they'll just come running right up to you saying, I love you, I miss you. And in that brief moment, everything's great. So that's how I've been able to handle it.
Great. And Kristen?
So I think we just tried to get outside as much as possible. We played handball, which is a take on volleyball, and we definitely entertained the entire neighborhood with that during the early months of COVID. Lots of walks on the beaches, and the volleyball net is back up in case anyone is interested. Big games, hopefully, once we can get together. But I think also just spending time with the kids and my husband, playing board games, Yahtzee, my favorite, Uno, and then exercising. I was lucky I got my Peloton before COVID hit, so I definitely used that a lot. And the live classes was just, it was amazing that a live class could make you feel connected to, people when you were in such a quarantined environment. So I definitely think exercise and fresh air helped me deal with the stress.
Love it. What would you say has been your biggest challenge in COVID, Kristen?
Homeschooling the children has been very challenging. And I think part of that stress had to do with the fear that I wasn't doing enough for them. Especially actually, I can't even say that. Like a lot of my focus had to go on my two younger ones because of their IEPs and, you know, making sure they understood what they were doing and, you know, worrying that I'm not doing enough to address them. And then my poor older guy was on his own just because there's only so much time in the day. So that was definitely a stress. And I have to thank Mrs. Schultz for helping me through last year, Mrs. Files for helping my son out this year, and Mrs. Theophilus again for helping, and all the teachers. They've done an amazing job. And, you know, thanks to them, that was part of my sanity, their help. So.
Thank you. And Sean.
Yeah, I think the toughest part personally was just not being able to see family, connect with family, and seeing friends and neighbors also kind of experiencing the same thing and in a weird, twisted way, kind of coming together over that. I know my dad lives down in Connecticut, and he's a part of a very vulnerable population for COVID. So having not been able to see him since moving here has been really tough. And I think also just in a general sense, there's a shared just tough feeling and sadness over the fact that COVID was paired with a social pandemic. And last summer there was so much unrest, so much anger. And I think that it just provided us, unfortunately, this necessary space and opportunity to start having some really tough conversations. And so, you know, as we talk about that light at the end of the tunnel, I'm hoping that it's ushering in this new wave and a new opportunity to start having some of those tough conversations that we may have shied away from in the past.
What do you think the last year has taught us in education, Sean?
I think it's just brought to light a little bit more the fact that there is no one size fits all approach to education. And I think that's something that's readily accepted by educators at virtually all levels. But I think even furthering the understanding that that individualized learning approach just needs to be celebrated, encouraged, and supported, frankly, at the teacher level. Resources to help them understand, identify, and create those learning opportunities for every single student that they have. Teacher expectations are already through the roof. So the best we can do is to be able to support them with the resources so that they can bring that extremely high level of instruction and support to every single student.
And Kristen.
I think it taught us adaptability, both as teachers, as students, as administrators, and as parents. I definitely was more engaged in their learning environment. I had to learn different computer systems along with them. The teachers, I commend them for the amount of time and effort that went into getting the curriculum together so that we could help our kids. The efforts that they put in, the amount of emails that they answered was staggering. I wouldn't have gotten through this past year without their assistance and their support. So I feel like we can appreciate what everyone's doing a little bit more. And just, I'm so impressed by how we were able to adapt and change and learn this remote learning. And it was used as effectively, I feel like, as it could have been. So I'm going to go with adaptability.
Love it. So just following up to that, Kristen, do you feel like this year is a lost year? Why or why not?
Yeah, it's definitely not a lost year. Academically, it might not have been as good as the previous year, but I think life experience is also really important. And I think we've all had a really important life experience, one that I think our kids have learned from. Not to say that I'm not concerned that there may be some deficits that we're going to have to make up for from this year, but I know I personally learned a lot with the 6th grade and 4th grade curriculums that I've helped. So there was definitely learning going on, but life skills, I think it's invaluable what our kids learned this year from that perspective.
And Sean?
Yeah, I think there was a lot to take away and a lot of learning that took place this year. I think making those quick pivots to a remote and digital learning landscape and the skills that come along with that, and skills that frankly reflect a lot of what current industries are requiring of new hirees that they're bringing on. But I think it's also something that we need to keep in mind that this pandemic didn't isolate single grade levels or single areas. It was global. It impacted everyone. And so that level of impact and progress that we would normally have had in a non-COVID year was felt throughout the world at all different levels. So, and I think this opens up this opportunity to have this understanding that this was just a very difficult and challenging year for everyone. And that when we're talking about, should we be at a certain level, it's understanding that no one really had a really great opportunity to make that next level progress. So using that as kind of a baseline for how we're identifying how we look back at this past year.
Great. So further to that, Sean, what do you think the Duxbury schools have done really well?
I think the level of support in providing students and families safe options to plan around what this year looked like. I know being asked to go remote was not in anybody's, ideal form of what the 2020-2021 school year would look like. But I think that there is a level of appreciation for a district to make a plan and commit to it, and to provide a long-term approach that allows individuals to start to put a plan together, and to allocate resources. I think the continued support for remote learners, knowing that there are still incredible anxieties around returning to in-person learning, both at the student and the professional level. I think that just shows how much the district is really taking into consideration that mental health and social emotional piece of student life that was severely impacted this past year.
Thank you. And Kristen, what has the Duxbury schools done really well?
I think the amount of in-person learning we had this year was very amazing. And I know I mentioned this on another forum that like my sister's kids didn't go back to school until recently. So the fact that my kids were in school, twice a week, my older guys, I feel that their remote days were very well done with the Zooms that they had. I felt like that was done extremely well. And I have to commend them for addressing the concerns that the parents did have with the lack of synchronous learning in the younger grades, because once that shifted, and even, I think they ended up getting like an hour and a half or a little bit more at that point, like that just made a tremendous difference to have that weight taken off the parents. Like, am I doing this right? Are they getting this curriculum? Am I teaching it right? What am I doing wrong? So I think that transition was great. Selfishly, from a parent, again, with 2 kids on IEPs, getting them back in January to 4 days a week just eased so much of my worries, because they were getting the services they needed that I just could not provide at home. So I think recognizing that they needed to get our high needs learners back in January was fantastic. The communication from the teachers was amazing. Like, I cannot commend our teachers enough for the work that they've put in this year, for their patience with us parents not knowing what we were doing, for the multiple emails, for the hysteria. They just were amazing. So hats off to the teachers too.
Thank you.
Okay, so this brings us to our next section. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm ready, I'm up.
I know, you've been giving wonderful answers, both of you. You're doing great. So in your opinion, so Kristen, this will go to you first. In your opinion, what do you think the top 3 responsibilities of the school committee are?
Budget, evaluating the superintendent, and hiring, firing. And then my third one is establishing like goals and policies to direct the school system.
Great, thank you.
And our strategic, I mean, I feel like our strategic plan is under that.
Excellent. Thank you, Kristen. Sean, to you.
Yeah, so definitely being able to support and analyze the budget for upcoming operating years, to really think critically with other minds at the table around the different types of policies that can be supported and introduced to help make sure that the district continues to evolve and grow forward. And then I'd say one of the more, maybe it's not explicitly stated, but I think it's an expectation that I know school committee members take on readily, is just being open to community engagement, allowing communication to exist in multiple forms, and ensuring that the community that they're representing has an opportunity to voice concerns, questions, recommendations, or even those successes that they're experiencing, because we all like to hear how things are going well. I know it's I personally still have to relearn how to share good news, because I feel like it's been a lot of just troubling news over the past year. But I think that's something that we need to really make as a common practice, is the celebrating of good news, and using school committee as an opportunity to continue to promote those.
Great, thank you. And Sean, I'm going to stay with you. What are the top 2 strengths that you see of our administration? And do you have one weakness you might want to share?
Sure. So I think one of the strengths is that Dr. Antonucci comes from a very financially savvy background. And I think that helps, not just in having kind of the head of our district understand the budget to a T, but helping to create an opportunity for anybody who may not be as familiar with understanding budgets and knowing how we're trying to increase opportunities to bring in more resources while still operating with a very hard line. Because I think that level of clarity is necessary to have those true conversations going forward, and to not have anything that's either misunderstood or misinterpreted.
Sure.
And then I think another strength is just the head administrators at each level of the school have just shown me just this incredible openness to share and willingness to invite in. And I think that's also reflective of just Duxbury as a community that, since I've been here, I've just gotten the warmest welcome from neighbors, from strangers, from people letting me like step in front of them in the grocery store. So it's just this essence of willing to invite in and listen. So I've appreciated those strengths. And then I think an opportunity to grow is just an opportunity to increase those chances for communication. I think we realize that unfortunately in crisis eras, there's a lot of engagement from community because it impacts virtually everyone. But I think it's also a good common practice to create more touch points and more spaces for voices to come together to, again, share frustrations that they may have, recommendations they may have, but also, again, share those successes, or even share some of the resources that they can provide or networks that they're a part of. And just allowing that to be brought in. I think the district as a whole is welcoming to those resources. It's just, if we don't create a space for them to promote themselves out, then we just don't know that they exist. So that would be something that I would encourage to see a little bit more of.
Good. And I like how you flipped weakness to area of growth. I saw that. So Kristen, 2 things you think our administrative staff has done really well, and one possible area of growth.
So I think the level of commitment they had to the school and the students this year was amazing. Obviously, the amount of time and effort that went into providing our children with the amount of in-person learning, I could never thank them enough for that. So that was through their hard work and coming up with the plans for a successful hybrid model. I'm very grateful for that. Our school specific administration, we are so fortunate to have such wonderful principals at our schools. Mrs. McGuire, I get to work with on the school council, and I always think of her like she has such a poker face when we're talking about issues or other things. I'm like, I wouldn't want to play her in poker because I could never read her. But then as soon as we start talking about programs for the kids, she lights up, and the joy on her face and the excitement that she gets from different things that will help the children is just beautiful to see. And one of the questions I answered for the Clipper for tomorrow was that my daughter got in the car pickup, and Mr. G, who's the assistant principal at Alden, she's like, he's everywhere. I see him wherever I go. And for my daughter to recognize that, it just makes me feel like they're present. So that's a huge strength. And as a parent, I feel like he has a pulse on the school. If she's seeing him everywhere, he has a pulse on what's going on. An area of growth, it has to be the communication. And not only the communication, but the receptiveness to ideas that are different. And I feel like if we can have an open environment at the top, it just trickles down. So I feel like that's, a push for me. Like, I just want the school committee to be an avenue where we're collaborative, where we're pushing each other to have difficult conversations and, almost set the standard for the expectation of the school. Like, there are going to be hard conversations. There are going to be differing opinions, but we need to be respectful, and we need to be open-minded, and we need to be calm and have a good talk and come to a conclusion. And then at the end of that, we need to be respectful of the decision that's made. It might not be what we want, but at least if we had that great conversation, we need to be okay with the decision.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. Have you met, Sean, with any school committee members, past or present, that have helped inform you about decisions you might need to make and about our community?
Yeah, so I've met with both past and present school committee members. And I think it's important for anybody who's stepping into this capacity to learn from previous experiences, to kind of hear how best practices within that construct of a 5-person team can operate, and how they best operate, and how those relationships with the school administrators, how those are best maneuvered. And I think in terms of specific questions, you have things around, the top responsibilities for school committee, which, budget being one of them. So understanding the history of spending that exists within Duxbury, both as a town and also what gets allocated back to the schools. I think conversations around difficult conversations or difficult situations that have popped up in the past, ones that may be similar to things that we've been hearing and seeing more recently, and just using those as reference points. So I think there's a lot that we can learn and continue to learn from past and present committee members. But I think it's also important that we as new potential committee members can bring new perspective and new approach. I think that's what, any committee that has multiple heads on it is looking for and will embrace, is that varied perspective, and just getting a different point of view. So as much as I've learned from others, I'm equally excited to kind of bring in the different experiences that I have, in hopes that it can help support decision making going forward.
Great. Okay, last one for this section. Starting with Kristen.
You want me to answer that question?
Oh my goodness gracious, Kristen, how could I do that? Yes, and we're gonna do like speed. So we have so many questions to ask you.
Okay. So do you want me to answer that quickly?
You answer it quickly.
Okay, so I have not met with them in their capacity. Well, I shouldn't say that. So I've talked to a few as part of group of parents that wanted, we did speak with one regarding our concerns in a group. We've talked to a former school committee member for his perspective on how to best reach out to the current school committee. I have had experiences with 2 of the members just through interaction with my kids. So
Good.
that's my interaction. So, okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
I was quick.
Good. Okay. So now, Kristen, I'll stay with you on this one.
Okay.
What do you understand about open meeting laws?
Open meeting laws. So if there's 2 or more, if there's two, I think, I have a lot to learn.
Yep,
But
and that's fine to say that.
I think if there's 2 members in like meeting with someone, it's then becomes an open meeting is what
Okay.
I don't know if that has to do with that, but that's what I think I've been
That's
told.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
thank
do
you.
have a lot to learn. I'm a physical therapist. So I'm open to learning. Like I said, learning is part of the process of
Yep.
every life.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead, Sean.
Yeah, Sean, how about you?
Sure. So Kristen, I'm with you. I'm still learning some of these pieces. When I heard open meeting, I was like, oh yeah, open door, come on in, let's chat. But from what I've understood is that if any 2 or more school committee members are talking about school committee related items, that it needs to be public forum. But a school committee member could engage with an individual in the community who wants to talk about school related items in a one-on-one private format. It's only when school committee members come together that needs to be public forum.
Excellent. Thank you both. Do you want to skip down to the next section for time purposes? I'm asking. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So why don't we jump to budget and then we could always go back if we need to.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, great.
So let's talk school budget. Superintendent Antonucci has consistently stated that a 2.5 annual budget increase is simply not adequate to meet the demands of a 21st century public education system. How would you approach this challenge for the town budget? To you, Sean.
Yeah, so I agree that by itself, that override doesn't necessarily reflect the level of commitment that this community, I truly believe, wants to make to supporting its schools, and just the overall excellence of school performance. I've cited my nonprofit background as of being very familiar with learning how to be as creative as possible with as little of a budget as possible. Oftentimes that budget looking like a $0. And that forced me to be almost hyper collaborative and engage with as many resources and community members or community institutions that I could to try to offset any potential cost that we were anticipating. So when we're stretching the dollar, we were really just stretching our own networks and embracing a resource-rich community that we existed in. And I think that same resource-rich community exists here, just in conversations with parents. And sometimes, through reactions to how things are done and how things are reported out, it's oh my goodness, I do this every day at work. I could have done X, Y, Z. And my goal is to help activate that desire to, I could have done X, Y, Z. Why just limit it to yourself as you as a professional? Let's bring that expertise, let's bring that resource into the community. I know there's that investment, and I know we just need to create that opportunity and that outlet to bring that in. And I think by truly doing that, we can continue to try to stretch that budget so that 2.5 override does get us closer to where we need to be.
Thank you. And Kristen.
I think it's a combination of, getting that 2.5%. I think the biggest concern is that we need to continue to address, the type of education we want for our kids, but we also need, with, Sean had mentioned before, like the mental health aspect. It shouldn't be left up to the teachers to deal with those issues. They're not trained. So I think that's really important that our budget allows for the different areas that we may need. The second part of that is that I think there is we do owe it to our taxpayers to make sure that we're using our budget most effectively. So I feel like going in with fresh eyes and, you know, asking our department heads and Dr. Antonucci, are we using the money most effectively? I think that's important. And I also think it's important to see, you know, are we utilizing the funds raised through the PTAs and the DEF? Are we utilizing those funds most effectively? And what can we do better with that? So I think the budget issue is a big issue. And at the end of the day, we need the budget to promote the robust education that we want for our kids. And, you know, the demands are just getting bigger and bigger. And, you know, we need to make sure we have the money and the support to provide for the children.
Thank you. School committee meetings grew from attracting 5 attendees pre-COVID to hundreds during 2020. How do we keep families engaged in school committee in a post-pandemic setting when topics of budget still need huge community support? Kristen.
I think we need to keep allowing Zooms to happen. I think people are busy. And like I said, when we were talking before, I'm able to put my earbuds in and I'm able to multitask, fold laundry, cook dinner, you know, kind of direct the kids, or even hop in the car and be carpooling and listening to school committee. So I feel like we need to continue to do that. And in addition to that, I feel like if there was a parent concern portion of the agenda where it was an open conversation or concerns that parents brought in or emailed us or, you know, informed the school councils and the school councils let the school committee know, and those were going to be addressed, I feel like that will also keep parent engagement. But I have to say, I think the Zoom just provided a lot more ability for parents to participate.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Sean.
Yeah, I mean, Kristen, I completely agree. Zoom has just increased access at all levels. It's a fantastic tool for engagement, and I think it's something that, you know, when we're talking about some of the things that worked well during COVID, this is definitely one of them. At the same time, I want to make sure that we're not just creating a new way of connecting to the meetings, but also kind of reestablishing what that relationship looks like between community members as an audience. And I think that there are examples of kind of these organically forming groups in the community that are coming together to have conversations about what's going on at the schools. Whether it's your next door neighbors or your neighborhood street, or parents at a certain grade level, or even, you know, student groups that are coming together and you know, they provide a collective voice. I think these are all different groups that we can activate in this space of school committee, knowing how much these decisions and these conversations impact every single stakeholder. And students definitely being a part of that, but also school support staff, teachers, faculty. So the more that we can create those spaces to have those individual groups come together and feel like that they have an opportunity to share within these spaces, I think that's something that's already existing, and we just need to be able to tap into it as school committee.
Thank you. In the essence of time, I'm going to move on to, or actually Rachel is going to move on to communications.
Oh, you're muted.
10 more questions in that budget section. But
Oh, wow.
If I had a nickel for every time someone told me I was muted, right? Okay, so pre-COVID, school committee has historically experienced many difficult decisions, including full day kindergarten, change in start time to benefit our older students, a new school building, just to name a few. They were difficult decisions to be made, knowing that whatever you decide, some constituents won't be happy. What strengths do you have that would help you handle a situation like that, where you had to make difficult decisions knowing that some constituents wouldn't be happy with the decisions you've made?
Like-
That is going to, who was our last? Let's
I
go
think that's gonna
Sean
be Sean.
first.
Yeah, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you step into this role knowing that one of the expectations is the hard decision making that needs to take place, and knowing that maybe you don't always come to the most popular decision, but trusting that it's the right decision. And I think one of my strengths is being able to have that relationship building where I can take the time to sit down with somebody who, you know, is seeing things from the other perspective, and helping to not only hear their concerns, but to also help them understand a little bit more as to why this decision was made, and knowing that change and growth is oftentimes uncomfortable, but seeing what this could look like in terms of long-term impact, and frankly, what the impact could be for the greater community. I think it's no secret that success of schools also relates really well to the success of towns and communities. And I'm hoping that's something that we can all continue to keep our eyes on.
Right. And so Kristen, same question to you.
Yep, I feel like as a school committee member, I don't represent Kristen O'Connell, I represent the community. So I would hope and I would assume that with any major decision, there was task force or some sort of planning committee or something to give us some information. In addition, I would hope that there was parent surveys and community surveys so we get the pulse on what the majority of people want. And I think that's important as a school committee member. It's not per se what exactly I want, but what our community wants and what the people that voted, if I get in, that voted me in, what they're saying to me. I know I mentioned this before, but you know, as a physical therapist, I'm usually the bearer of bad news to the patients and let them know what they can or cannot do. And I think it's pretty much what Sean said, like you have to actively listen to people. And I feel that we are in a society where I feel like people just want to be heard. And if they feel heard and they feel represented, I think they're going to be fine with the decision that was made if it was the majority decision. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Okay, so now to Kristen
Yes.
first. So with the
Right.
challenges that social media gives us in today's world, how would you respond or manage seeing debate on, let's say, Duxbury helping Duxbury or other platforms where decisions made by public employees and school committee volunteers are often
Yeah.
criticized, discussed, and maybe people don't have all the facts?
I think that's part of the society we're in right now, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, I think if it's that much of a hot topic on social media, have we done the best we can do in communicating? So as much as it, you have to be able to scroll through it and not take things personally, I think we also need to look at it as a way of what is the overall concern. And of course, you're going to get your, people at both ends, your extremes, but like we need to be able to see the middle and what are those people saying? We also need to provide them with another opportunity. Like they shouldn't be going to social media if they have a concern. Do we have an avenue where people feel heard? Because if they feel heard, if they send an email and saying these are the hot topics that the parents want, and they're being addressed through a newsletter or on our school committee meeting, then maybe they won't resort to social media for that outlet.
Okay, thank you. And Sean, same to you?
Yeah, I think actually the beauty of social media is to create those spaces for those conversations to take place. I can check with the moderators of Duxbury helping Duxbury to see if that's necessarily the appropriate place to have those conversations. But like Kristen was alluding to, creating intentional opportunities for those reactions and that discourse and dialogue to happen. But I think rather than just letting it sit there so that two sides can go at each other, it's being intentional about how are we having a no blame, no shame type of conversation where our intention isn't to make the other side feel more wrong than us, and to try to win them over into seeing things strictly through the lens that we're looking at. I have a pretty significant background on restorative practices and restorative justice. So these types of conversations, I'm really familiar with inviting, as a third party, inviting in two sides to help them understand perspectives from both so that we can get to that middle ground and level of understanding. So, if it's skimming through Duxbury Helping Duxbury, seeing those conversations happen and not letting it just sit as toxic conversation, but bringing it in for some actual growth, then, I'm ready to start scrolling.
Great, great. And Sean, I'm staying with you for this. Some parents expressed frustration this year with school communication and surveys. And I think that's common with, just what we've been going through. What would you have done differently to address these concerns of these parents, considering the CDC or DSU guidelines that needed to be adhered to?
Yeah, so I think in terms of being able to report back out findings, I think it's important to be transparent, not only with communications on an initial level, but also on a response level. At that same time, I think everyone was dealing with multiple moving targets where certain expectations and certain guidelines one week are shifting the next week. So as much as it's frustrating on, a community member or a parent end, or even a student end to see that there's something new each week, we need to trust that that's also the same level of leeway and heads up time that our administrators are getting. And I do commend our administrators for acting ahead of the curve in terms of state guidelines for return to classroom. I think, if we are playing that dangerous game of comparison, Duxbury has made incredible success just with that return to in-person learning, all the while still making sure that students that don't necessarily feel comfortable coming back are properly taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kristen, same thing to you?
Can you repeat the question? It was,
Yeah. So some parents have expressed frustration this year.
Yes, with the communication.
Yeah, with communication and surveys.
Yes.
What would you have done differently for those parents?
So I think
understanding that we had the guidelines of CDC and DSU to adhere to.
I just think it's very simple. I just feel like instead of saying this is what we're doing, I feel like it's, we hear your survey, we see that 90% of you want to return to school full time. However, this guideline that we were given does not allow us to do that. And this is why we've made the decision. So I just think a little bit of information as to why decisions were being made might have been a little more helpful, and just the acknowledgement of the results of the survey. Yes, we hear you. We hear that you guys need your kids back in school, that you're struggling at home. We see it, we hear you, and we are working on it. So it goes back to the acknowledgement of what they're hearing. It's like active listening. And I go back to like when I have to take a telephone order for a doctor for a prescription or an order, we have to read it back to them. We have to say, or range of motion, passive range of motion 3 times a day. So I read it back, passive range of motion 3 times a day. It's active listening. Am I hearing exactly what they're saying? Parents just needed to be heard. And I feel like if it was an active listening, we hear you, this is what you're telling us, this is the restrictions we're under, we are continuing to work on it.
Yeah. And maybe just getting that communication out. I remember another survey where I think the teachers and the parents had about 64% wanting to all be back. So maybe letting people know that we're in it too. And we feel the way that, we also want this to happen as soon as possible, considering the health condition.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Okay, so I am going to, can I jump into our next section?
Yep.
Sue, is that good? Okay, so moving on to diversity and some of the issues that our community faces.
Yeah.
We recognize and acknowledge that this is not what either of you expected to be dealing with while campaigning. But nonetheless, it is something our community is facing in real time. This isn't just a Duxbury issue, it's a global issue and one that has been ongoing for Duxbury. It's important that we address it tonight, as the school committee will likely be facing some decisions related to DEI in the future. We want to hear from our candidates and how they might approach these topics. So I'm going to ask this question first to Sean. What does equity mean to you? And how can we ensure equity in the Duxbury Public Schools?
Sure. So for me, and I think generally equity is understanding that everyone has a different starting point, has different access to resources, access to opportunities. And equity is the act of creating and providing resources and those opportunities so that individuals with different starting points are given a little bit more of a fair or even playing field, equal opportunity to achieve success. And it is absolutely something that needs to exist, not just within schools, within life, within industry. I think, we are not all born into the same equitable situations. And we have life experiences and lived experiences that maybe set us down, different points. And to be able to know that there are resources and structures in place to help support us in that growth and that moving forward, I think is necessary to just civic responsibility, but also definitely here in Duxbury as well.
Great. And Kristen, same to you?
Equity to me is about fairness, about providing everyone with the same opportunities. And, from a school committee standpoint, I feel like it's about ongoing evaluation of our policies and our strategic plan to make sure that, it fits what is needed to make sure everyone's provided with the same opportunities. I also think that in order to ensure that, we need to have that avenue of communication, that judge-free communication, so that people can feel comfortable and open bringing questions and concerns and not feel like there's going to be recourse or any sort of, rash approach to what they're telling them. So I feel like we really need to create that space or create that avenue of open communication.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kristen, I'll stay with you.
Yes.
Does diversity education belong in the K-12 curriculum, or is it best addressed at home?
I think it's the old saying, it takes a village. It takes a village. I feel like, it starts at the home. I have my kids before they even enter the school. But I feel like the school then provides, a different aspect through the different people they experience in the school. So I think it's a combined effort, and I feel like in the younger grades they do a great job of with the respect and I've been seeing Being Green programs to try and create areas where the kids can be good people. So I think yes, absolutely, it's a dual effort.
Great, thank you. And Sean, same to you.
Yeah, I agree with Kristen. It is a both. It's not an either or. I know in a recent statement, in light of the unfortunate news that we received, Dr. Antonucci provided language around how the district is going to be intentional about bringing DEI practices into sports and co-curriculars, but it also needs to be consciously integrated into classroom as well. We definitely need it at our homes, because that is our initial safe space, and that's where we can genuinely approach some of these topics that may not be comfortable, but a necessary part of our own personal growth and development, but also knowing that any person other than yourself brings in an opportunity for diversity, whether it's age, race, religion, belief system, And
Good point.
just being able to expose yourself to so many different diverse perspectives, that's something that needs to be celebrated or at least promoted more. So whether it's reflected in, updating course materials, or talking with, updating policy around what are some of the types of things that we can bring into different classrooms and different disciplines.
Great. Thank you both for that. Next one. So Sean, I'll stay with you for this. We don't have our initials. So I keep forgetting, but forgive me.
My
for
fault.
that. It's okay. Oh, please forgive me for that. So Sean, I'll stay with you on this one. How can we better equip the kids in Duxbury to live and act as allies within a diverse world, the world that they're going to be entering once they graduate from Duxbury Public Schools? When they have, obviously, such a homogeneous experience as students in our public school system, how can we better equip them to live in the real world outside of our lovely little town?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to do in a town that is, full transparency, 98% white. So when we're trying to understand how to equip our community for a diverse world, we still need to be aware that there are opportunities for experience and diverse learning opportunities virtually everywhere around us. We need to connect with other communities. We can do that on a national level. We can do that at a global level. I know some teachers, as they're rethinking how learning happens and taking advantage of technology, they're connecting their classrooms with classrooms from the West Coast or classrooms abroad, and just using this as an opportunity to kind of say, look at these same, sorts of questions, these same life experiences, and understand how drastically different they can look. But also understand that to that other perspective, that's normal.
Right.
So it's resetting and re-understanding what normal does look like. I think there can be some, like I said, greater representation of diversity in class content, internships in classrooms for students at the higher level who are looking to get into industry. That provides diversity in, application of learned experiences. But ultimately, this needs to be an effort that supports our entire community. We can't just confine this to how do we bring diversity into the schools. We need to, as a town of Duxbury, live out and embrace this willingness to not only provide diverse experiences, but to also welcome diverse individuals and make them feel welcomed and make them feel like that they belong in a place that shows itself as very, very white forward. And that's something that I would gladly bring myself as a resource for.
Excellent. Thank you. Kristen, same question?
Yeah, I think it starts with looking at our policies and our strategic plan and making sure that it is open to, creating a diverse experience for our students and making them into the global citizen that we actually want. I think we also need to look at what type of life experiences can we provide our children. I know two of my most eye-opening experiences when I went to the Peace Wall in Belfast and when I went on a mansion tour in Nashville, and I learned more about the slaves. Like, they were so profound. And I'm not saying we should send our kids to Nashville or Belfast, but how can we incorporate the senior center or different community outreach programs to help educate our kids and give them more life experiences? I know my oldest went to a food shelter and distributed food as part of the middle school when he was in middle school. Can we have more opportunities like that so our kids can have different experiences? Can we have any of our seniors come into the classrooms and give them talks about their life experiences? Can we tap into our teachers? They may we know, we look at diversity as just the color, but diversity really falls into religion, sexual orientation, ability level. What types of things can we draw from that? And when I was talking to a friend of mine, she brought up a great idea. Can we look at our calendar? What can we do with our academic calendar? Can we incorporate, half days and professional development days on other cultural holidays, so that important days to other religions or cultures are being celebrated. And then we can also make a point of how, we're going to do this half day on this day, so that the people celebrating whatever holiday have this opportunity to celebrate. This is why they celebrate. This is how they celebrate. And I just feel like we need to take more advantage of the diversity that we do have and celebrate it and help our kids. The last but not least is the curriculum. I feel like we just need to encourage our curriculum coordinators to be as open-minded and open to different suggestions. And I think our teachers, we have such a great resource of teachers that are so dedicated to our kids. What can they provide too? And how can they help the curriculum? Are we providing that open communication, that team approach? And the only way we can be better is if we're open to hard conversations, and that if we accept opinions and input from everybody. And also, I would love to see parental involvement and other stakeholder involvement, the community. How can we make our education better? Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Those were great answers. I appreciate them very much. Sue, would you want me to do one more from this section? If we have time, or what, hun?
So we're a little bit over on time. Our goal to have 60 questions in 60 minutes. Really quite a feat.
It was a great goal.
Might make it. We've still got a number of questions here. Maybe we take one or two more and then we'll go into final thoughts.
Okay. So I will go with Kristen for this one.
Okay.
Okay. So I might go back to this other section that I left off on, if you don't mind. Okay.
I've got one.
Oh, I really love this one. Can I ask this one first?
Do it.
It's so exciting to me.
I'm so excited.
I always ask
This, Adeline.
I always ask this in interviews, and maybe it's because I'm looking for a right answer. I don't have a right answer to it. There are many thoughts I have on this, but if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about education in this country, what would you do?
I went to BU, so this is tough for me to say, but I really like the co-op model of Northeastern. And I feel like if we can provide more life experience and more learning, like as a PT, you go on your clinicals and you're like a deer in headlights, because they're like, okay, go treat this patient. And you're like, well, I've learned about all this in school, but having that hands-on, hardcore dealing with patients and people, I feel like that's the life experience you're going to get. And I know Duxbury is trying to increase the community outreach. And I would love to see more of that in the strategic plan, utilizing Island Creek Oyster, Duxbury Maritime School, the senior center. So I think having more life experience and hands-on approach, I think would be fantastic to learning.
Great, thank you. And Sean, same question.
Magic wand. Wow.
Magic wand.
A lot of power.
Use it wisely.
Oh, I will be. I would say removing all prohibitive costs towards access. And I think that's not just at, higher levels of education where you see significant tuition costs, but also at younger levels in accessing tutoring resources, and knowing that additional support is needed virtually at all levels. And oftentimes it comes with a price tag that unfortunately can prevent individuals from getting resources that they truly need. So if that magic wand could really just do all of that and just remove all of those price barriers, yeah, that would absolutely be my wish.
Great answers from both of you. Thank you for that. Okay, Sue, I jumped in, but there's one about what the 3 qualities a Duxbury should, right? Should we ask that one? Okay, this is a great one. I think this was Sue's, but this is wonderful. What 3 qualities, so Sean, I'm starting with you this time. What 3 qualities do you hope every Duxbury graduate goes away with?
I want them to have a level of respect for anyone other than them. I want them to have a willingness to approach every conversation and everyone else's experience openly without judgment. And lastly, I would hope that they could step away feeling informed as a contributing member to general society. And I think that has a lot to do with them being supported in their own growth and understanding how incredibly special and impactful they can be with their talents.
Great, thank you. Kristen, how about you?
I think confidence is key to any successful person. I think the more confident you are, the better ability you have in making difficult choices, having difficult conversations. So I would love every graduate to be confident in who they are. I would love them to be open-minded so that they can see different perspectives and not just look at tunnel vision, have that wide open world, come get me, I can't wait to learn from you approach. And I think empathy is really important. We need to be able to understand how someone else is feeling, understand what our actions and words, how they may affect somebody. So I think empathy is really important. And just personally, like going through different things as a child with, surgeries that I've had allowed me to be empathetic to my patients. And that has allowed me to be a good therapist. So I think empathy is so important to really be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So confidence, open-minded, and empathy.
Great, thank you.
Empathetic, I guess, is my lack of proper English. I apologize. Science major. So
There you go. Sue, do you want to do the final, or would you like me to ask another?
I'm going to go with the final thoughts here at this point.
I think they've done excellent. So I'd say
They
give them
sure
the
have.
final.
So tell us a little bit about what you've learned through this campaign about yourself or your community that surprised you. And let's go with Sean first.
Sure. So I'll go with what surprised me most about myself. And I think that is just my desire to have built up life experiences is now finding in this opportunity to, what I had always hoped to bring that back out to the community that I call home. And I think having lived in different places before, but not truly feeling that sense of home, but somehow feeling that within COVID here in Duxbury, I think it didn't surprise me so much as it was just a new feeling of, I now just this whole new level of excitement to bring my life experience, my professional experience, my goofy human side to the community that I am just so incredibly excited to dive into. And then what surprised me about this campaign, again, is just the openness that everyone has provided, whether they knew me since day one of living here, whether they were a brand new contact, whether they were willing to open me up to their own personal networks, whether they didn't agree at all with my perspectives or point of views, but just the genuine desire to have conversation and share. And I think that's something that, all communities are kind of starved for right now, is just wanting to connect, but also knowing that that was something that, I think it speaks mountains that I was able to have some of those really powerful and really, really positive conversations with people that we just didn't agree at all. And it's good to be able to have those civil conversations and continue to get those diverse perspectives. So that was something that pleasantly surprised me.
Thank you. And Kristen?
What surprised me was that I didn't think that this was, I thought, I was like, it's school committee, we're going to help the kids. I didn't understand that it is sometimes looked at as a political position. So that was definitely how naive I was. Going into this, I guess, was a surprise. But at the end of the day, I think what was so great about this experience for me is I've learned so much about the opportunities that are available at the school that I didn't know about. I had no idea that we did screening of our K through 2. I learned that how passionate parents are, and like Sean said, on both sides of the coin, they're passionate. They're worried about their kids. And also just how awesome this community is. Like, people that I hadn't even known reached out to me through Messenger and were like, we support you. What can we do to help you? And it's been truly amazing getting to know people, because my youngest now is in 4th grade. So getting to know some of the people in Chandler and seeing them, it was really nice to feel like the support and love of the community. And, it was such a positive experience in that aspect. And what I've learned through researching all these questions that we've had to answer, it's just, I'm more involved and even more invested than I was, a month and a half ago.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a blast. Thank you very much to both of you. Here's an opportunity to just in 2 minutes or less share, what are your last thoughts that you would like to share with this community? And Kristen, over to you.
Okay, I think I keep going back to my 3 objects: balance beam, glue, and bridge. I really am in this to provide balance through open-minded communication and just having those difficult conversations that are needed. And I just want to provide just some balance so that everyone feels represented by the school committee. Glue, I feel like everyone worked so hard this year, but I feel like at times we were on separate islands. And I just feel like I just want us all to come together. And I feel like if we can all work together and really be respectful and open and communicate, like, the things that we can accomplish as a community will be astounding. A bridge, I really truly want to provide an opportunity for parents to feel more engaged in their children's education, to feel like they have a voice and that they're heard. As a physical therapist, I've worked, bringing teams together to provide great outcomes for my patients. I just want that opportunity to bring everyone together to provide great outcomes for our students. And last but not least, I'm a stakeholder in this. I have 3 kids in this system. My youngest is in 4th grade. I want these schools to be as awesome as they can be for my own kids, and not only for my kids, but for all my friends' kids, for the kids that I don't even know. I just feel like we have such an incredible resource here. Let's maximize it. And I just want to be part of that system that allows that for our kids.
Awesome. And Sean.
Sure. So I'm going to go off script from my usual closings, because I think there is a current issue that I think needs to continue to be talked about. And I think that there are definitely members of this community and individuals that were directly impacted by words and actions that were taken recently by the Duxbury High School football team. And as much as we're talking about coaches and players, I feel like that we're not providing those conversations and those reach outs to those that are being impacted and affected. So I want to use this as a space and an opportunity to let those individuals and members of those communities that I have and I will continue to stand with you in solidarity, and to continue to create as many spaces as possible where we can have the necessary and difficult conversations to support just general community healing and growth. These pieces of growth, it's a never-ending journey, but we just need to have that openness to talk and engage with everyone. And I'm always learning that we don't know what we don't know, and once we learn it, we just need to continue to do better. We need to understand our intentions versus our impact, and how we may have the greatest of intentions of things that we do and things that we say, but also understanding how some of those may negatively impact people that we care about. We need to have and continue to have grace for ourselves to channel a feeling of no blaming and no shaming for a commitment to helping, but also knowing that we need to continue to get better every single day. I'm not special. I am still on this journey. I've put personally a lot of hard work into this, and I am nowhere near done. There is no done in this. So regardless of your experience, regardless of your exposure to topics like this, I just wholeheartedly and wholesomely welcome you and invite you into doing this work as well. Your experience at whatever point you're at, that is your access point. And in this community of learning, I know many others are ready to help support. So I hope that we can use this sad, tough time as a true turning point in how this community responds.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kristen. So just as a last, before we leave, can we just, can you share, how can we reach you if any of our viewers or listeners have questions? And then how do we vote?
So I think absentee ballot information had to be in today. Oh, was I supposed, Sean, I think I took your spot. I think you were supposed to go first this time.
No, you're good. You're
Okay,
good.
so I think absentee ballots were supposed to be in today. So Steel Building 8 to 8 on Saturday, March 27th. That's where you can vote. There was another part of that question. Oh, you can
How
reach
can we
me.
reach you?
Yes, you can reach me. Where can you reach me? At Kristen O'Connell for School Committee, which is my Facebook page, and Messenger, either or. And I guess that would probably be the best way to reach me. And I think Jess may have some emails, and then I will reach back with any questions. And yes.
Yeah, I will add to that before you go, Sean, that anybody can always, if there are questions that we can forward along, you can email admin@duxburystudentunion.org. And that comes to Sue and I. We can certainly filter them through.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then I just dropped into the chat both links to my Facebook page as well as my website. Both get regularly updates, either with articles, events that are taking place. I'll use this as an opportunity to plug a virtual happy hour this Thursday at 7 if you want to ask me any questions leading up to the final day. But know that if you reach out to me, I am more than happy and more than welcome those conversations. And yes, I believe applications for absentee ballots were due today. And if you do have an absentee ballot, make sure that it is, oh, boo. Make sure that it does get into the town clerk's Dropbox by 8 p.m. on Saturday at the latest. So the same cutoff time for in-person voting. And I hope to see everyone on Saturday.
And we just got a message that panelists can only see the chat feature. So thank you, Karen Wong, for letting us know. So if you want to get Sean, it's let's see, facebook.com/Sean for Duxbury or www.seanforduxbury.com.
It's Sean D for Duxbury.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
So if you do that, you'll probably find me.
Terrific. Well, thank you to you both. This has been wonderful. We didn't get through all the questions, but we tried to touch on all the topics that our community was most interested in. It has truly been a delight to spend the evening with you both. I wish you both the most wonderful success in the next few days. I'm so thrilled that one of you will be our future school committee member. I hope whoever the one is that doesn't get through on Saturday, that you keep in touch, that you stay involved. And please, to everybody that's watching on the call, please get out and vote, and tell neighbors, tell your friends. Let's do all we can for these two candidates.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye, everyone.
Great
Have a good
job,
night.
guys.
I don't want to be the first one to leave.
I don't want to leave either.
Everything's so
wondering the
quick when
same
it's a work
thing.
call. I'm like first one up. off, but
It's early, guys. It's not like we've been busy or anything, right?
Oh my gosh, you're wonderful. Thank you so
You
much.
Yeah,
both
thank
did
you
so
guys.
great.
What a joy.
And thank you, Rachel, for
Oh gosh, this
being
is
our amazing
fun.
MC.
This is really fun. You guys really were amazing. I loved your answers. I'm going to follow both of you and just appreciate that you're willing to work hard for the community. There's nothing more important to me than the pursuit of education. And I just am thrilled to hear both of your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
You
Bye,
too.
Sue. Bye,
night.
Jess.